Welcome back to Tech, Finance and Politics, where we bring you the latest updates on tech, finance and politics from all around the world. In today's video, we're going to be talking about three recent news stories that have made headlines around the world. The Russian former president talking about nukes, EU pressuring China, and Italy's part in the Ukraine conflict. Now, first up, we have the former Russian president Dmitry Medvedev firing a warning to the US that Russia has the right to use nuclear weapons to defend itself. That's right. Nuclear weapons. He says that the US is trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia in the conflict in Ukraine, and he warned the US elites to not think of themselves as untouchable. He also commented on the fact that Russia has paused its participation in the New START treaty on deployable nuclear weapons. Medvedev claimed that he had long anticipated the move and argued that it should serve as a message to the United States establishment, which thought it could pursue Russia's defeat. But he said, strategic defeat and strategic security is another issue. The former leader called this line of reasoning a bad mistake by the Americans and warned that since the US wants to defeat Russia, we have the right to defend ourselves with any weapons, again, hinting to the nuclear weapons. Now, the former president is known to speak openly and loudly about Russia taking things into another level, But the question is this something the Kremlin agree with, or is it just his own opinions? Him and Putin have been close for more than 15 years, and the question is, are these Putin's thoughts as well? And if so, is he simply warning of actions to come instead of saber-rattling as usual? Or either way, it's just not great news and continues to make the situation much worse. Now, next up, we have the EU's top diplomat, Joseph Borrell, who had recently had a conversation with China's foreign minister, Wang Yi. They discussed China potentially giving weapons to Russia, and Borrell emphasized the big difference between this scenario and the EU funneling arms to Ukraine. But that's not all, you see. The US has also cautioned China against supporting Russia's military efforts, and things are beginning to heat up between those two nations as well. The Chinese ministry has urged the US to seriously reflect on its role in stoking the Ukraine conflict and noted that the US, not China, has been pouring weapons into the battlefield. Now, this has fueled tensions between the US and China, and the situation is escalating quickly. China has been advocating for a peaceful resolution to the conflict, and they plan on releasing a peace proposal soon, which many in the West are skeptical of. Meanwhile, Beijing and Moscow have been strengthening their bilateral trade since Russia's military operation in Ukraine last February, and they are currently taking part in trilateral naval drills with South Africa. And South Africa recently has been in hot water with the United States since they allowed a Russian military ship to dock there recently, but we'll talk about that more in probably another video. Recently, China's top diplomat Wang held a meeting in Moscow with Russian Security Council Nikolai Patrushev ahead of the potential visit to Moscow by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, Russia-China relations are said to be rock solid, and this is according to their words, and can withstand any test of the changing international situation, and this is according to Wang himself. China's in a bit of a tough situation because if they support Russia fully, they could be sanctioned heavily, and their economy is just starting to recover from heavy lockdowns. The Chinese people are also on edge from being locked up, with there being protests in China in 2022, at the end of 2022, which we saw. So China is having to navigate its internal issues with long-term strategic interests at the same time. If Russia fails and falls, they are on the border with China, and that creates a power vacuum that China may not be comfortable with. If there comes a new leader in place, one that China does not have a great relationship with, like they do currently with Vladimir Putin, that may be something they're not comfortable with. So supporting Russia may be something they're really looking into if they see that Russia is losing in any way. Similar to the reason they support North Korea with technology, food, weapons, because they know if North Korea falls, that means United States troops are on its doorsteps. Now, my belief is the Chinese are buying time to get their economy ready to slowly cut out the US dollar. The US will most likely want China to engage in Taiwan before that happens, to have China bogged down there, similar to what's happening with Russia in Ukraine. Now, these are just my opinions, but the truth is the situation continues to get heated, and you can stay tuned for more updates on this story. But before we continue, please do subscribe for the latest on tech, finance, and politics. Now, finally, we have some news from Italy. Recent reports claim that Italy was ready to donate 5 of its older AMX ground attack fighters to Ukraine. However, Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni has clarified that Italy will not supply fighter jets to Ukraine. Italy is working on a new arms package for Ukraine that includes air defense systems, not jets. Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has vowed to keep up the flow of weapons indefinitely, which is a very strong commitment to Ukraine. And this is great news for Ukraine, but falls short of what they were hoping for, which is jets. One last bit of worrying news comes from Serbia. President Alexander Vučić has warned the world is preparing for war, and his country is cashing in on the global arms race. Vučić revealed that Serbia's military industry is working overtime to keep up with the skyrocketing demand driven by the conflict in Ukraine. We're making anything and everything that the people are willing to buy, he says. Ammunition is selling like hotcakes. And Vučić said that while attending the IDX weapons fair in the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, he said, we can barely keep up with the orders, and I don't know how some of this stuff hasn't ended up on the battlefields of Ukraine yet. Now, demand for things like rockets, for Grad multiple launchers systems has gone up by a whopping 70%, and Belgrade is struggling to keep up. Worried about NATO encirclement around Serbia, Serbia itself is looking to expand its ammunition production, since all is spoken for already. They just sold out. But there's a catch, you see. Vučić is worried that his country may not have enough hardware for its own needs. So he's calling for at least 30% of everything made in Serbia to stay inside of Serbia. And he said, well, we're surrounded by NATO countries and everyone is getting ready for war. We need to be ready and prepared ourselves, Vučić said. Now, Belgrade is also importing whatever it can, including a bid for Rafale fighter jets from France and a contract with the United Arab Emirates for kamikaze drones. But here's a kicker. Vučić is expecting greater changes on the battlefield in Ukraine in the next 2 to 3 days, which may lead to further Western pressure on Serbia. The Serbian president has so far resisted the US and EU demands to sanction Russia, insisting on Belgrade's military neutrality in the ongoing conflict. And Serbia has a strong history and a strong relationship with Russia. If push comes to shove in a global war, the chances are Serbia would most likely be on the Russian side. So for them to be stocking up on weapons at the doorstep of the EU will certainly make the United States and the EU very uncomfortable. The fact that he's also saying there's going to be a strategic change on the battlefield, knowing that he has a close relationship to Vladimir Putin and Russia and Serbia do have a close working relationship, leads us to believe that we already know Russia's preparing a counteroffensive to take more land, and they've been building up and training these soldiers that they recently enlisted, but it means that Russia's probably going to be attacking sometime soon. So there you have it, folks. The situation is really getting heated, and it's important to keep a close eye on all the developments. Now, you can stay tuned for more updates on these stories, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest on tech, finance, and politics. Thanks for watching. Until next time.